Hello, good day, and welcome to the Point 99 podcast. I'm Mr. Steve, and this is episode 8 of season 6. As always, I am your host and your running companion. That might be during those long runs, while you're catching your breath in between your interval sprints, or talking to you while you master your tempo sessions. As for the Point 99, well, we're a running podcast for every runner of every ability. What you hear is what you get here. Great, honest chat with everyday runners about everyday running. The show has had one mission since I created it back many years ago, and that is to help everyone along whatever path their journey with running is taking. It might be through relatable guests and the unique and inspiring stories we get out of them, shared experiences and lessons that are learned throughout all of it. Or now, I've added short educational segments designed to help improve all of our knowledge and make us more knowledgeable about the wider world of running. Hopefully, by sharing all of this with you, you'll feel inspired and motivated to do amazing things, smash your goals, and be the best running version of you. With the introduction out of the way, we're going to pretty much jump straight into it. You'll probably already guessed this week is very much unscripted. I wanted to share what I'm going to share today as naturally and honestly as possible. If you listened to last week's episode, or if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be fully aware that I undertook my first point-to-point ultra marathon at the weekend. Sure, I've done lapped ultras before at the Loch Ness 24, but it is a completely different beast to doing your first point-to-point in one-shot ultra. I'll try my very best to cover as much of the event in as much detail as possible, the highs, the lows, and the lessons that I learned throughout the whole challenge. I am recording this early in the week to try and get as much of the honest and raw information and emotion as possible before the week as a whole dilutes it and contaminates it with work and life in general. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the ultra in itself, I'm just going to let you know that there's no segment this week. I do have it recorded. I have all the segments recorded. Unfortunately, the one that I have lined up next, and they have been recorded in series, wouldn't really fit with this episode at all. It's about carbon shoes. So I'm going to leave that until next week's episode. I think it will make a lot more sense talking to the guest that I'm going to be talking to than fitting it into a trail ultra or predominantly trail ultra. It just would make no sense at all. But let's make a start with the event that I was taking part in on the 3rd of April. So Sunday past, giving it a date just to kind of date it a little bit in episode wise. The event itself was hosted by UltraX. I think they're quite a well-known global brand. They run events all over the world, ultras in places like Morocco, all over the UK. They have series. I think they also run like Kenya, Norway. So it's not localized just to the UK, but they do run a UK series. They run Wales, England, Scotland. I'm not sure if they run Ireland. So I was taking part in part of the Scotland series. It's one of those events, though, that I would have been silly not to have taken part in. It's pretty much on my doorstep. It's definitely in my local area, my stomping ground. So I was pretty much committed to taking part, I would say. Knowing people that have also taken part in the past, I thought it was a great event to get my teeth stuck into, especially considering some of the events that I have coming up in the next month or two and then later this year. It was a great stepping stone and learning experience as a whole. The whole series had a range of distances taking part over the course of 2 days, so the Saturday and the Sunday. You could sign up for 110 kilometre. You could do either a one shot, so doing it all in the one go. You could do a multi-day, so you would do 60 kilometers, then wait, camp overnight, and then undertake the final 50 with the event I did, the 50 kilometer. You all started at the same time. And then there was also a 25 kilometer and a 12 kilometer, which when I get to that stage of the event, I'll explain a little bit about why, as great as it was to have those events on the go, it was also quite frustrating. But yeah, I'll get round to why that is a little bit later. My training had pretty much been, I would say, on point. I'd been training for the Murray Marathon that I've talked about on the last 2 episodes. That didn't take place for me. The event as a whole took place. I just didn't do it. So my event preparation was pretty well solid. I'd done a lot of marathon preparation, which kind of built into ultramarathon preparation. I'd done my carb loading. I'd sorted my electrolytes. I had my pack already, albeit I did have to buy a new hydration pack and running pack. And as much as I preached last week about not trying anything new on race day, I had to do it on this occasion myself. I had to buy myself a Solomon Active Skin 12, I think it was, because the hydration pack that I was planning to use had burst its zip. So I had no alternative. I had to purchase a new one. Now, the Solomon gear, I know from other runners, good friends of mine, are a great range of products. And the item that I had was a fairly unknown brand. So I was a little bit more comfortable that buying something like a Solomon Active Skin 12 would be a lot more comfortable and well put together than maybe an unnamed brand. So yeah, I got everything packed. I followed the list of critical items that you have to take. Now, if you're unfamiliar with a lot of the ultras, there is a set list of items that you must take, and then there's recommended items as well. Sometimes you get away with doing drop bags and not carrying as much items, but in this instance, there was no drop bags, there was no external support. You had to do everything self-supported, other than having checkpoints where they had the usual sandwiches, fruit, top-ups of energy gels, those sorts of things. Even with the list being written down, and I went over it 2 or 3 times as I packed my running pack, I couldn't help but think that I'd maybe forgotten something. So come the night before, similar to how marathons go, you go to bed with good intentions of getting a good night's sleep. And the reality is that didn't happen. For me, I managed to get around about 3 hours 20 sleep. I only know that because that's what my watch told me, but it felt like a lot less. I felt like I saw every hour on the clock, with my mind racing about, had I packed everything? Was I going to get a spot check on the course? If I was missing anything, would I be asked to leave the event? It's all the kind of unforeseen, unlikely things that might happen, but your mind just doesn't switch off on the lead up to an event like that. So to say that I was a little bit tired in the morning is an understatement, but I did my best to wake myself up, black coffee, couple of slices of bagel, I think it was. I was planning to have a few more slices, but I just couldn't stomach forcing food down my throat at 4 a.m. And that was the reality of it for me. Because I was so local, I was going to drive to the pickup point. I'd paid for transport from Inverness, so parking the car and getting a shuttle bus to the start line. Very similar to the Loch Ness Marathon, it starts at the end of the loch at a place called Fort Augustus, which is an hour's drive from the city of Inverness. Of course, at that time in the morning, there is little to no traffic in the Highlands, so I managed to get smoothly into the city, went and joined the fellow competitors that were waiting to get the bus, all 50-kilometer runners, and there was 2 quite sizable coaches waiting for us. And I sat next to a very pleasant lady whose name I can't remember, but I know she was a dental hygienist from Peebles, She may be listening to the podcast, so I can only apologize for not remembering her name. But I had a great conversation with her, and I was listening to different accents and nationalities and languages and conversations also taking part on the bus for that hour journey down. And it just felt like such a great atmosphere. But the hour journey sort of passed very quickly, just with the lovely conversation I had with this lady. And on arrival to Fort Augustus, I kind of stuck with her, did our pre-race preparations. There was about an hour of waiting before the start. And again, that hour disappeared very quickly just with our race prep. She had to grab a tracker. She was one of only, I think, 4 people taking part in the 50k that opted to do the tracking option. You had to pay a little bit more money, but since I run with a Garmin, I've got Strava Premium, I have a tracker anyway, so I didn't feel like I necessarily needed it. And then we also had a kind of semi-tracker. At every medical checkpoint you had to get checked in. You weren't allowed to go through that checkpoint until your number had been logged in a system. Now, if you had gone through, you ran the risk of not being allowed to complete. It's in the terms and conditions. It's probably never going to happen because you can miss someone. It's such a busy little area, these checkpoints, that it's possible that the member staff can miss someone as they're going through. But yeah, she grabbed her tracker, we got ready. It was a lot colder in the morning than it had been for the entire week. So it was a case of putting the coat on, which you had to have in your pack anyway, waterproof coat, just to stay warm. But it soon came off after we got started. I did also start talking to a fellow colleague of the same company, the same organisation I work for, albeit she's from another part of the Highlands. So I got a nice little conversation with her and her partner. And before we knew it, the start was being announced. We were all gathering up, ready to go. Throughout the campsite, though, there was a range of 110 kilometre participants who had, like I said at the beginning, camped overnight, having taken part in the first 60 kilometres, with the other 110 runners who had done it in one shot. And now the winner for the 110 in one shot, I'm pretty sure it was in like 12 hours, which is insane considering the terrain they were running on and the weather they'd been running in. There was rain, sun, wind, and I'm pretty sure someone said hail as well, which doesn't surprise me given that we've had a little bit of snowfall just on a higher ground just today, and it's Tuesday I'm recording this, so that doesn't surprise me. So they had the privilege though of running with the 60 kilometre participants, the 110 kilometres, and then themselves, and they had a great evening. There was lovely tents that they were set up in, a couple of single mans and a few people tents, but they were slightly bigger. They looked quite comfortable as camping goes. But that was enough of that. We all got amassed at the start line, and as I say, that hour just dissipated so quickly. Before we knew it, we were lined up, the klaxon went, and we were off. Like I said at the beginning, I'm fully aware, or at least I was fully aware of the terrain, the route for the most part, because I've taken part in the Etap Loch Ness 4 times, and it's a path that runs parallel to the road that you ride up. You go a little bit higher than the road at stages. You do climb from pretty much sea level to around about 500 meters above sea level for that first climb, and that is pretty much all up the whole way. There's a couple of little dips as you go up. But yeah, I had to take my jacket off pretty early on. It was overcast, there was a low cloud level, but the heat quickly built. I only had a t-shirt on underneath, so I was surprised. I usually expect wearing base layers to take a while to get warmed up, but maybe the excitement of it all was enough. So jacket away, made our way up the hill. Now it was about halfway up, around about 250 meters above sea level. The dental hygienist had been working her way through the pack with me, and then she kind of fell into formation, and I continued running. Now, a lot of people were walking, and I know I give the recommendation, and the recommendation from seasoned ultra runners is to walk the hills. And for the most part, I did, but there was certain sections that were pretty low gradient. So I felt like walking maybe wasn't the best option for me. I wanted to get the legs going, get a bit of activity building, get the heart rate up a little bit. So I was prepared for some of the tougher sections, and I could get out of the massive bodies and get slightly further forward in the field. And that's exactly what I did. I made my way up the hill and started having what I feel were great conversations with other participants from all over the world, all over the UK, people from Leicester, Motherwell, although I was confused at that point because all our bibs had our flags on it, our nationality flags, and this nationality flag was Polish. And the guy had spoken to me before I realised what the flag was, and he sounded very Central Belt. And in the next breath, really in-depth Polish. So I had a look, and yeah, he lived in Motherwell. And I found out since the event's completed, he actually knows a couple of ultra runners that I'm familiar with, and hopefully future guests to the show. So it was quite pleasant to have had a lovely conversation with him and his dad. A couple of other people that, well, there was one guy in particular I accidentally took a photo of at the start line, and he just looked so nervous, but also it was a great expression on his face. I haven't shared this photo because I haven't asked the guy if it was okay, but throughout the event, we kind of met each other a few times. He'd overtake me and disappear, and then I would overtake him and disappear. And after the event, we actually bumped into each other at the local car park there. We both left our cars. He was from Lentrin, I think he said. And we had this great conversation throughout the three of us. And I think that's the main takeaway from the whole event, taking a break from explaining or talking about the terrain and the elevation. I knew, and I had been told, that ultra running was a great place to have conversations and to meet people of a like-minded nature. You can't really do that during marathon running. Everyone is there, usually in a marathon, to get a time or to smash some particular goal, and you're running not on the edge of your ability, but you are pretty much running hard for a lot of it for most people. Whereas ultra running, I think you have to be a little bit more sensible. You have to walk the hills. You got to be able to catch your breath so you can have conversations. It feels a lot more natural. Now, going back to the start line, I should have actually said that is unlike any other start line I've ever been on. The tension was non-existent. People were just having a laugh, a joke. I don't think there was very many people there expecting to get a super flying time. There were some elites at the front that you could tell they didn't have everything packed that you maybe had on the list, but we'll let that slide. But they kind of went off like a shot anyway, and they got some fantastic times. But for the most part, people were there just to see it through, to have a good time, and to survive the challenge. And I kind of got that feeling as I made my way through, as I spoke to the young chap from Motherwell and his dad, and the guy from Lentrin, and also the dental hygienist. People were just there to do something tough, to do a challenge and to complete a challenge that very few other people are ever going to do. To go back to the gradients though, the total race gradient elevation gained was 1,393 meters. To put that into context, Monroe, I believe, is 900 meters high. For anyone that doesn't know what Monroe is, maybe do a bit of Googling, but it is one of the peaks in Scotland that are mountainous peaks that are over a set height, and I think it's 900 meters. Could be wrong. So the first big climb was up to about 500 meters, and as you might imagine, when I say there was low cloud cover, it was low cloud cover. You made your way into the clouds pretty quick, to the point where you couldn't really see about 50 meters ahead of you, which had its challenges. It was rugged terrain, pretty much all terrain, all trail terrain to that point, very rugged, mixture of compact gravel, compact soil, and quite robust stones. But that was quite enjoyable. That was like 7 to 10 kilometers worth of distance to get to that, and the first checkpoint was not far off the top of the peak, but I didn't stop. I kind of rocked on through and just moved my way through. I will say that I think for all the checkpoints, I pretty much didn't stop. I wouldn't advise that. I really wouldn't. But I packed more than enough. I had more than enough calorie reserve than I needed. I had, I think, about 14 gels on me. And within the terminology, you also had to have a hydration system capable of taking 1.5 litres of liquid, water, whatever. It didn't say at any point that you had to fill it, but I did. I took 1.5 litres or just over, maybe about 2 litres actually, of water. So that's quite a weight to be carrying as well, especially when you haven't trained with it. Again, I wouldn't recommend not training with your full race capacity, but I felt confident, and I've done similar things in the past and had no issue, so I didn't really feel too out of my depth with it. So I took this water. I didn't really stop at any checkpoints because I had plenty of hydration on me. I had 2 soft flasks of electrolyte solution by my I want to call them sponsors, but the company that I'm an ambassador for, Protein Rebel, who I will say now are very interested in getting involved with the podcast, either coming on as future guests, but also maybe giving a discount code. So stay tuned. In future episodes, there may be a good discount code coming to show the support to both the podcast from their perspective and from my perspective to the brand. Because after all, I'd done a lot of my preparation with Protein Rebel products, gels, electrolyte solutions in my water, very salty tasting water, but it's what you need when you're sweating out bucket loads of salt like I was. And they also do like collagen powder, which I do take in my coffee. I almost swear by it now, and I'll get to why by the end of this whole event. But they also do protein powder as well, which I haven't tried, but I am very up for trying at some point. Anyway, getting back to the event, and I quite a lot of gels and hydration on me, so I didn't stop at this first aid station. I made my way to the top of the hill. Spoke to a couple of fellow competitors that I didn't have such good conversations with, but you see people and you can see that they're in mild discomfort, I would say. Particularly a Canadian lass who had been taking part in the 110 multi-day. We were quite near the top of the peak, and she was pretty much in tears. So I did the gentlemanly thing. I asked her if she was okay. And she said she was struggling. She was finding this particular part of the race tough. So I gave her my local knowledge, told her that we were almost at the top. She asked me to promise that was the case, but luckily for my sake, it was. And I kind of just left her at that. I didn't want to be hanging around her, especially when she wasn't feeling great. And she wasn't, I don't think she needed anyone's aid necessarily. It was more just that mental boost. Her mindset was maybe just playing up a little bit, especially having done 60 kilometers the day before, and depending on how well you sleep when you're camping as well. But she did pass me again. She passed me a couple of times, interchangeable passing, to the point where I actually didn't see her after a while. I passed her, and then she didn't pass me again after, I think it was the third aid station. But the stage from the top of the peak at 500 meters, around about 10 kilometers in, it is a very nice and chill downhill to checkpoint 2, a place called Whitebridge. Now, for those who have run the Loch Ness Marathon, that is a very familiar name because you run through Whitebridge, and there's a great set of supporters always come out there. I sit outside the pub, sit outside the local church, and there was no difference to this one. It was the first of the medical checkpoints. You had to get signed in, and like I say, I didn't stop, but I've been having a great conversation with the Polish lad and his dad, and the chap from Lentrin to that point, and they both stopped. I cruised on. It was at this point, though, I did lose. The only thing I lost throughout the whole event was 2 of my magnets for holding on my bib number. I don't know how I did it. I'm pretty sure I have a rough idea of how I did it and where I lost them, but it doesn't really matter. I still had 2. I rearranged them and kept my number on, but if you're using magnets on your race numbers, I would recommend maybe keeping them for just road racing, where you're less likely to rub the magnets down and lose them. Maybe stick to safety pins for ultras. But I was feeling great. I didn't necessarily feel any discomfort until much, much later in the event. And it wasn't a discomfort that you would imagine. But up into the second and past the second checkpoint, I felt great. It went really well. It was a little bit jarring having gone from trail and then onto tar, especially wearing trail shoes. I usually always run in tar shoes, even in trails. I thought better of it for this event though, because I knew that the weather overnight had been a little bit damp, and I thought better wearing trail shoes than wearing tar shoes because of that unpredictability, the slippiness that could be on some of the surfaces. And you do in this event have to cross a couple of small fords, a couple of small burns and rivers. So it was erring on the side of caution. But that change of terrain from trail to tar in trail shoes can be quite jarring and take a little bit out of your legs. But it was mostly downhill until we got to a place called Foyers. And the Foyers I knew was going to be a tough section of the race. I actually was fully aware that it's probably going to be the toughest section, even tougher than the 500 meter climb. And that's because you kind of go down to sea level, you go to loch level, and then you've got quite a steep and fast ascent up a forest path that's got quite steep steps. It's at a place called the Falls of Foyer, a really nice waterfall to visit when you're not racing in an event. So that was very, very tough. It was also where the 25-kilometer race was taking place from. It was starting from there. So you did get a little bit of the sound, a bit of the pre-race party vibe that was going on as you took a diversion past where that start line was and headed up through the forest path, as I say, up the steps. It's very, very tough. I'm not going to lie about that. It's a great place to take your time, pop in a salt stick electrolyte tab or two, and just get your wits about you, kind of get your hydration and nutrition in order, because you need it. It just takes so much out of you. Big steps, and it didn't really even go that high. I'm pretty sure it's only like 200 meters, maybe 150 meters, but it felt so much harder than the 500 meter climb, like I say. That could be because by that point you are 25 kilometers in, so you're halfway there, and you are feeling it, because there is no comparison between running a marathon and running an ultramarathon. Sure, ultramarathons, for the most part, for most competitors, are walk, jog, make the most of the ability to walk on the uphills and cruise the downhills. But it is more of a pleasant pace, whereas running marathons, like I kind of hinted at before, you are running on the limit pretty much most of the time, or at least I am. And you can run for 42 kilometers, 26 miles at a very consistent pace. But you can't really get a consistent pace with ultra running, or at least not in this event because of the elevation gain. So I found it quite tough getting to the top of the Falls of Foyer. The support, however, was second to none. There was a lot of people there. There were a lot of familiar faces. From people that I maybe don't know myself, but I know to see them in and around the local area. But there was also, I am pretty sure, a very familiar face, an Olympian that as well, Megan Keith. I am pretty sure Megan Keith was supporting someone she knows. at multiple stages of the event. I did finish ahead of the person she was supporting, if it was her, which, considering the people that you would imagine Olympian to hang around with, is quite an honour in a way. But if it wasn't her, then she's got a doppelganger in the area. But I know that she's got a lot of people she knows in the area. She still runs for Inverness Harriers. She's still local, a local girl from the Highlands. Anyway, I digress. But the support was really good. It really does help so much, especially when you're mentally in that sort of pain cave. Physically, you're okay, to keep going. But it is relentless. It felt like a relentless uphill battle. And it's just telling your mind that you are coming to the end of it, and to kind of just grin and bear it. I thought I knew the course pretty well at this point. I knew that we headed back on ourselves almost in the direction of the start line before disappearing into the local forests and heading up again. And it just felt at this point like we were constantly going up. I think if anyone was following my stories, I kept saying, I think we're finished or almost finished with the climbing. We're almost finished with the climbing. Why aren't we finished with the climbing? It just felt relentless. None of the downhills necessarily felt like downhills, apart from the kind of 10 to 20 kilometer mark. It felt like an actual downhill. And then near the end, obviously, as well. But the climbing was relentless. And at this point, we had the 25 kilometer race guys starting. So we were going up these climbs and you were walking. I think anyone with common sense was walking anyway. And these guys were absolutely hammering up the hill. And I hadn't realized they were 25 kilometer runners. I just thought these were guys that started further behind me. And I said to one guy, I said, "You're a machine." And he goes, "Well, I'm only a machine because I'm running half the distance you're running." And at that point it clicked. And these 25 kilometer runners, males and females and whatever gender they were aligned to, came flying past, and they were just coming past thick and fast at one point. And at that point, your mind, you can't help, even though you know they're not running in the same race as you can't help but feel a little bit demoralized when these people are absolutely cruising by you. It was, thankfully though, on mostly downhill sections to the third checkpoint. And that's the first time that I did take a momentary stop and got asked if I was okay, if my legs were okay, because I'd picked up a graze on my knee. I hadn't fallen or anything. I think I just brushed on against a spiky bush or something, and I had a little bit of dried blood on my knee. But I stopped to get an orange segment just to change the texture and change the flavour in my mouth from energy gel, salt stick, electrolyte solution, water. That was pretty much my routine. That's what I was doing. Energy gel every 7 kilometers, 6-7 kilometers. Electrolyte chew to make sure I was keeping my salts up. Electrolyte solution as well, just to be extra safe. And then washing it all down with some water. Rookie mistake for myself. I didn't take any like wine gums or Percy pigs. Anything with a little bit of fruit flavor, just to give me a change of flavor in my mouth. So I had to stop briefly at checkpoint 3 and then again at checkpoint 4 just to get an orange segment. And that's all I did. I did pass the chap from Lentron again at this point, and it was at that point I didn't see him again. I didn't see him until we finished the race. I did hang around at the finish to meet the chap. Didn't see him come across the line, but I bumped into him at the car park, so we got a bit of a post-race chat. But yeah, it was at that point it felt a lot tougher after checkpoint 3 because there was another big climb. This is where it really felt relentless. It was a forestry path, but also a farm road, so it was tar and trail. And you were climbing and climbing and climbing, and the views were second to none. I can't stress how beautiful the Highlands are, and especially the views over Loch Ness in the nice weather. But when you're climbing and climbing and climbing, and you've got the 25 kilometer people still passing you, and by most of this way you've then got the 12 kilometer people passing you as well, you're just feeling a little bit worn down. At no point did I ever feel like my legs couldn't continue. I felt like I had the energy. I felt like I was hitting my electrolytes really well. I felt like I was hitting my nutrition really well. But all throughout this, pretty much the second half of the race, the relentless kind of up and down was starting to hit my core. I like to think I've got quite a strong core. I do a lot of work on my core, but it was the relentless up and down on tar and trail, quite severe downhills in some places, like on mountain bike tracks. And there was a very, very sharp downhill, and it's just that constant thud, thud, thud that was jarring the abdominal muscles, and I just felt that it wasn't painful, but it was a discomfort. So I'm going to do a little bit more work on my core. But it wasn't unmanageable. It wasn't at any point was I thinking about stopping. It was just move forward, keep going, enjoy the conversations, and yeah, I was still kind of juggling off and on with the Polish father and son. There were other people. I've been speaking to a boy from London who was doing the 110 kilometre, who had trained by running along the Thames. No elevation, no actual height. He was just doing long runs along the Thames, and he did phenomenally well. He passed me, and then he stayed past me. He did so well. Didn't catch his name. I didn't catch a lot of people's names, to be fair. I only caught the chap from Lentron and the Polish boy's name because they followed me on Strava. But yeah, it was going down into checkpoint 4. There was a very steep downhill, the mountain bike track, and that was where I really, really had to walk going downhill. It was very tough. I don't think you could really run it anyway, unless you were a head case. And it was getting down to that last checkpoint, grabbing an extra reserve gel just in case you went through too many, getting an orange segment and going. Unfortunately for me, I didn't hang around long enough to learn a crucial piece of information. Unfortunately, because there was a slight diversion in the route early on, there was a bridge that was out and we had to take a diversion, which explained why we had to run on quite so much tar at certain stages earlier in the race. You wouldn't normally run through Whitebridge. You would normally go into the hills past it. But unfortunately, there was a bridge out. So we had to do a little bit of tar running. And because of that, the course was 2 kilometres longer than it should have been. If I'd hung around at checkpoint 4 for just a few seconds longer than I did, I would have learned that. But I didn't. So I took off and I was getting our conversation with a couple of Glaswegian lads, and we were in a quite close to the end by this point. A place I'm very familiar with. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on the podcast. I possibly have, and maybe just don't recall. But I previously took part in an event called Man vs. Horse. Man vs. Horse is exactly what it sounds. You run against horses. You get a 20-minute head start, and then they try and pass you. The chap that I mentioned last week or the week before, who is a very, very good marathon runner locally, he has beaten the horses on a couple of occasions. Now, a while ago, he doesn't run that quite as hard anymore. But when we got to the event, that event start area, I was very, very familiar with where we were. I kind of got a quick chat with some chaps from the Central Belt. I wouldn't say Glasgow because I don't want to just tar everyone with the same accent as being in Glasgow. But it was a very Glaswegian style of accent. Got a quick chat with them and kind of reassured them that we were on pretty much the downhill from that point. It was like 2 miles to go. And they kind of got a quick chat and off they went. And I did a little bit of walking, and there was this lass that came out from the bushes. Not that I was looking at who's coming out of the bushes or what they were up to or anything, but it sounds really dodgy. But you could tell she wasn't quite right. She was a little bit, again, distressed. So I made the point of speaking to her, asking her if she's okay, if I had anything that I could help her with, if she needed any salt sticks. That was my main concern, was whenever I was passing anyone that looked like they were struggling, asking them if they needed nutrition, hydration, just trying to be a great fellow competitor and help people along. But she said at this point, there was nothing that could really help. I think she was really suffering with abdominal cramp more than anything. I don't think it was legs, just the way that she was trying to stretch herself out. I kind of got this idea that she'd maybe started cramping, and when you start cramping, it's very difficult to break that, especially when you've only got like 2 kilometers to go. You could take a salt stick, but it's probably not going to do anything in that short duration. Or at least I thought it was 2 kilometers to go. So I said to her, come on, you've got 2 kilometers to go. You're nearly there. I'm sure that you can make it down to the downhill and cruise that. And she said, yeah, I can, she says, but it's 2 kilometers to go and then 2 kilometers on top of it. I says, what do you mean? What do you mean there's 2 kilometers to go on top of it? And she says, the course measure's long because of the bridge it was out. And I kind of, I said quite a large expletive at that point. Because I was basing my pace at that point on hitting a downhill and hitting the home straight, and it's just when you think you're like 2 kilometers from home, and you realize you're 4 kilometers from home, that is such a blow to your mindset. Thankfully, though, I had enough left in the tank in my mind to hit the downhill, to cruise along to the final field. Having spectated for Kaylee Webster, the Happy Diet, many years ago, I was fully aware that you had to pretty much run past the finish line and run around the field and then come back on yourself. So I knew that was going to be tough. But I hit the field, crossed the main road, hit the field, and I could feel the tension rising. I could feel the emotions of knowing that you're almost at the end and you're trying to stop. I think I'm not ashamed to say that whenever you've done a hard effort, especially in like marathons and now ultra marathons, it's very hard to stop the welling up inside. That you're happy, you're super proud of yourself, but you're also emotionally drained. You just want to have a good old cry at this point. But I didn't. No, there's nothing wrong with if I did, but I didn't. I managed to catch my breath. Hit round to the final field. Now, at this point, I was very unsure whether my wife and my son were going to be in attendance because he'd been sleeping, and I wasn't sure whether they were going to make it because I didn't want her waking up the baby. And my mum and dad, I wasn't sure, but here they were, my mum and the dog. My dad was at the finish line with a camera ready to go, and here was my wife with my wee boy. And again, it's very hard not to kind of burst out in tears that you see that happiness, especially, and this is going to sound really bad, but especially when you see your dog. And I've done that before with the Loch Ness Marathon. When you see your dog and she's just so happy to see you, it's just like no person can ever be as excited to see you as your animal, your dog, your cat, whatever it might be. And at that point, I just cruised around the final corner, took the finish, and that was it. It was over. And it's not hit me yet. The fact that I've run a point-to-point 52-kilometer race, to use its better distance, its proper distance, to get your medal, to get your photo. I don't know how good the photo is. You haven't seen it. It comes out tomorrow, Wednesday. It'll be out by now when the time of the podcast gets released. But it hasn't really hit me. I'm still quite high about it all. I put up a post and I got some really good congratulations, some really good feedback. And I have to say, whenever I was making a post about the distance that I'd covered and the distance I still had to go, the DMs I was getting were so valuable. The family chat on WhatsApp and the DMs that I was getting on my own Instagram, they were so valuable. I can't thank the people enough that were taking the time to follow what I was doing. Sure, it wasn't necessarily tracked the same way as something like the Loch Ness Marathon, the London Marathon or something like that, but people were still taking the time and interest to support me. And it felt really nice to have these little conversations. And I wasn't typing much because I wasn't able to, while I was focusing on trying not to fall over on level terrain. But yeah, I've put up a post and it still really hasn't properly sunk in. Like I say, I went back to work today. Well, I actually went back to work yesterday on the bank holiday. And I thought, well, I'm going to be pretty sore. I'm surely going to be pretty sore. And yesterday, bank holiday Monday, nope, no pain. Continued through, no stiffness, no pain. Today, Tuesday, you would think second day. And still, no pain. I have jokingly said on Instagram stories that I must have hacked the Matrix. And there have been some interesting comments, but most people are saying, well, it will come, you're going to get hit. But I don't know. Throughout all of the event, my main takeaway is ultra running is easier than marathon running. That is my overwhelming takeaway. My second takeaway is running ultra marathons is a lot more sociable and less elitist than running a marathon. But I think that was known beforehand. I kind of knew that beforehand, that people were a lot more relaxed. There was less competitiveness. No one's competitive. They're just there to help each other and see each other through to getting to the finishing line. But yeah, I don't know. I loved the event. I would never run it again. But I loved it. It was fantastic. The terrain, the scenery, everything about it was beautiful. Running through fields with cows and sheep in it, to running through thick forests, dark forests, light forests, up hills and mountains pretty much, over rivers, over bridges, up steep paths, down steep descents. Yeah, it was a mixed bag, but it was amazing. It was really good. Other than the core being absolutely hammered, I feel really strong. I feel great going into my next event, the Highland Cross. I need to get on my bike and start preparing for that part of the race. But from a physicality kind of running perspective, I feel ready to undertake another elevated 20-mile run. I'll see how I feel once I get my recovery run for the week done and test the legs and see how they feel. But I feel physically strong and ready and raring to go. I actually feel so much better than I thought I ever would. And it gives me great confidence in my future undertakings with the Highland Cross and with the Glasgow to Edinburgh. It will have its own particular challenges because it is fairly flat. Canal paths and canals aren't notorious for going up hills. So it is very flat, that event, for a lot longer. But if I use a very similar pace as to what I used over the UltraX 50, I think I should be okay. You don't have hills and you don't have descents burning your legs out and eating your energy. I'm just going to click in here. I am recording this pretty much all in one go, so you're going to hear my mouse going here. You don't hear that often. But the time that it took me to do 52.14 kilometers was 6 hours and 27 minutes. That was 6 hours 20 of moving time. My personal record, it says, for 50 kilometers was 6 hours 10 minutes and 45 seconds. I have previously run over 50 kilometer distance at the Loch Ness 24, but that was a stop-start, taking rests, kind of continuing the watch later on. Doesn't really count. And that took like 8 hours. So it was a big win for me to do it in that. It is a phenomenal time to run a rough sort of pace of about 7 minutes 17 a kilometer over a distance of 52 kilometers with an elevation gain of 1,363 meters is phenomenally good. I can never be unhappy with that. It was never about a finishing time or where I finished anyway. It was always about survival, about seeing through the challenge and enjoying it. I think I said that fairly recently. My mentality when it comes to running has changed so much of late. I feel like I'm a lot more chill at the end of any race, regardless if I hit my goal or not. Because what's the point in getting hung up about it at the end of the day? I can't change it. No one can change it. So enjoy it and enjoy as much as possible. Statistically, from the stats from the event on the finishing list, my overall time from the event, from what they're saying, is 6 hours, 27 minutes and 15 seconds on the gun time, and the ship time, 6 hours, 26 minutes and 52 seconds. Wasn't a massive field, so that's not going to change too much. In my gender category, I was 52nd out of 143. Category-wise, which is the age category, I was 18th out of 40. And then overall, I finished a disappointing number. And it's only disappointing for one reason. Well, two reasons. One if you're a child, one if you're an adult child. I finished 68th out of 250 participants in my particular race. Now, if you're a child, you might want that to be 6'7". If you're an adult child, you might want that to be 6'9". And the stats for the medical checkpoints that you had, at 31.7 kilometers, it took me 3 hours, 46 minutes and 47 seconds. Then at kilometer 41.1, it took me an additional 1 hour, 18 minutes and 48 seconds. And then, as I say, to 50 kilometers, they're saying 1 hour, 21 minutes and 39 seconds, but that was actually 52 kilometers at that point because the event was long. There's nothing they could really do about that. I spoke to a future guest, and they said that if a ultramarathon race director hasn't given you extra, they've done you out of your money. Apparently, it's very common for them to do that. So, all in all, I can't really put into words how much I enjoyed it and how happy I am. I think it will hit properly in a few days. I think I'll get a bit of a downer because you get all the emotions and you get all the hype and you get ready to go and you do your event. And anyone that's run the London Marathon or Manchester Marathon recently, or run their first marathon recently, they'll have hit that. They'll have hit that emotional wall after an event of, it's over. What am I going to do with myself now? And that's usually why you end up signing up for another event. In my case, I've already got a couple of events, so I don't have to sign up for anything. Although I have jokingly told UltraFran, previous guest to the show, that she might see me on the start line at one of the Murray events, the Murray Coastal or something, which is another 50k. But no, I think I'm done for just now until I think it's 6 weeks until the Highland Cross. So I've got a lot of cycling to catch up on. I know I can run, so that's fine. And then maybe take a little bit of a rest between the Highland Cross and the Glasgow to Edinburgh. But it would be very nice to fit in another ultra just to keep the momentum going, to keep moving, to build upon the 800 kilometers that I've done so far this year. It's actually 800. That 50 kilometers saw me up to 800. A little bit behind where I would like to be, but a lot further forward than I have been by this point in any other year. That's just a challenge I've set myself. It's not I have just done 800 kilometers. It's no justs about it. And same as when anyone has asked me today what I was taking part in, I would say, I just took part in the 50 kilometer event. And they would say just, and I didn't mean it the way that it came out. I meant it because there were some absolute warriors doing the 110. And in comparison, I'm just doing 50. It's not in a derogatory way. It was just how I was comparing it. There was a little bit of sadness, unfortunately. I was expecting to have run part of the event or the event with a colleague of mine from another department. And for the last few weeks, he's had me believing he was undertaking the 50 kilometer event again. I know he sometimes listens to the podcast. And for these past few weeks, he's been saying to me, Yeah, you're going to take off. You're going to be far in distance. You're a runner. I'm not a runner. I won't say his name, but you are a runner. You've done this event before. He says, no, but I'm not built like a runner. I'm like, you're built like an ultra runner. He's not a skinny lad, but he's not a big lad either. He looks like an ultra runner. And I think if you know what an ultra runner generally looks like, you'll know what I mean. If you picture a road runner, you tend to picture a very thin person. But yeah, that's just by the by. You don't have to be any size to do any distance. I'm just genericizing, really. But yeah, and it turned out when I messaged him, asking him if he was ready for the morning, that he wasn't taking part in the 50-kilometer event. He was taking part in the 110. I don't know whether that was multi-day or single day, but unfortunately he got a very bad case of, as he put it, spasms in his leg. And I think he was getting very bad pulse and cramp, and the medics wouldn't let him continue. Whether that was the next day or the same day, they wouldn't let him continue. So unfortunately, I didn't get to run with him. He was hoping to see me at the finishing line, so my assumption is it was null and one. But safety first on these things. It's a long way to go from the start line to then climb 500 meters to then get to another checkpoint, really. And they did the right thing pulling him out. It's just a shame because he had it in his head he was going to do this. But there's always next year. He's got challenges that he wants to do. He's got 100 milers he wants to complete. That is not on my radar. I never want to do a 100 miler. I am reluctantly doing the Glasgow to Edinburgh because it's close to my 40th birthday. And it's a great challenge to see that in. But yeah, before I start waffling too much, I will just kind of wrap things up by saying that UltraX Scotland 50 was phenomenal. I would highly recommend it to anyone who would like to do an ultra. It isn't an easy course, but you are going to be joined by some fantastic individuals from all around the world, from Brazil, from Spain, from Belgium, from Poland, from Mexico, you name it. I think there was New Zealanders, Australians, just people from all around the world, all around the UK. And they're all very talkative. They're all very polite. They're just there to help each other as much as they're there to smash their own achievement. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's a great thing. I like to think I'm still going to classify myself and categorize myself as a marathon runner. I'm a road runner. I prefer the road. I prefer tar in the most appropriate footwear for it. And you see this a lot in reels and TikToks. Marathon runners or runners on tar in general are there, and they'll tell you they're not, but they're there to achieve a time and a goal that they are wanting to do. If they see someone in distress, they're unlikely. They'll tell you they will stop, but they are unlikely going to stop. I would like to think that if I saw someone near a finishing line of a marathon or a half marathon or a 10K or 5K, that I would stop and help someone finish their race. But I think that from an ultra marathon perspective, these people don't think twice about it. They're not there to achieve a particular goal or time, or at least a particular time. Their goal is to complete it. And for them to take a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes out of their day, out of their event to help you, it's a fraction of time, really. Tar runners are a different beast altogether. They're just wanting to get PBs as much as possible, unless you're just doing a marathon to push yourself to limits that you have either been told that you can't do or you shouldn't do, and proving other people and sometimes yourself that you can do difficult things. And the next step up for a lot of people is ultra. It was never about proving anything to anyone for me. It wasn't about joining some elite club of distance runners. I don't think I'm gonna kind of ride being an ultra runner or running that distance for very long. I am still just going to say I'm a marathon runner. I am very delighted to have done it. I am so happy to be in it even more exclusive club than some of the world's best runners will ever be in, because they're never going to run that distance. Why would you? Unless you're insane, why would you run 50 kilometers, let alone anything more? But yeah, I just want to again reiterate my thanks to other people that took part, that I connected with, to those that were answering or messaging me on DMs before, during, and after the event, to family members who were cheering me along from a digital perspective and then on the finishing line. But also you guys for listening and supporting in the run up to it. It is invaluable. I love all of it. I think you're fantastic people, and fantastic people help people do fantastic things. I think that's probably even bigger a takeaway to have. People can achieve such amazing things with support of other people, and I'm here for that every day. But by the time this podcast comes out, I'll probably have settled in, I'll probably have seized up, and I probably won't be able to move. But given that it is election week in Scotland, that's not an option. I don't have an option of breaking down this week. I've just got to keep on going, soldiering on, and not letting the legs seize up. And that's probably the best way to draw a line under all of it. I could likely elaborate a lot more about other competitors, about the terrain, about the conditions, about the event organisers, about all of it. But I think an hour of me rambling is more than enough. If you want a little bit more, you can always ask me in the DMs. I can always have a conversation with you, send you some voice notes. But for now, I think it's probably best to thank you for joining me, as you always do today, for downloading or streaming the podcast. Streaming and downloading the podcast is always going to be the best way you can show your support to the show. After that, it's maybe buying a t-shirt, but that's less about supporting the show, about supporting a fantastic brand in Twisted Running. They still have the original t-shirt. I never got round to putting the second t-shirt up, but maybe with the show being back, we may be able to refresh it a little bit and get something new on the go. But if you ever want to show your support to Twisted Running, but also wear the podcast on your chest and on your back, you know where to head on over to twistedrunning.com and then hit the drop down and look for the 0.99. Otherwise, you're already listening to it, so you obviously know where to find it, but we are on Spotify and we are also on Apple. I am working, like I said last week, on getting us back on YouTube, because I quite enjoy having people listen on YouTube. I think it's a great platform to listen to it on. Finally, if you want to give myself a follow or contact either myself or the podcast, which again is just myself, you can do so over on Instagram by searching the 0.99 podcast, and that's our handle there, at the 0.99 podcast. Or you can follow me and get in contact with myself at Mr_Steve_runs. If you want to share anything, feedback on today's episode, or just show me some love or even hatred, I don't really mind. Alternatively, you can email the show at the 0.99podcast@gmail.com. All one word, the 0.99podcast@gmail.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We will be back next week with a guest. I'm just lining up the best time to do the recording with them. But once we get that sorted, I think you're going to absolutely love the person that is joining me for episode 9? It's 8 or 9. I should know. I've just said what this episode is, albeit about an hour ago. Episode 9. It will be a absolutely cracking guest. I'm not going to give anything away on that one, but Matt did give a little bit away last week. He knows who it is, so if you want to try and crack that vault and find out, feel more than welcome. But yeah, once I get that recorded, we will get it up for next Friday. And like I say, it's going to be great. And then hopefully I get the person that I would like to do episode 10 in for episode 10, and then we'll take a small break and then come back again with a whole new format. Likewise, there will be a new segment next week. You already know it's going to be about carbon shoes. Just didn't feel appropriate to put it into a podcast about running in trails mostly. And then we have another 2 segments, which is going to be hard to fit in really. But we'll get it in, even if one of them has to go into the next part of the podcast once episode 10 is done. Anyway, I am rambling, so I am going to call it there. Thank you again for listening today, for joining me, and I hope that you have a fantastic weekend. Until the next episode, and as always, please stay safe, enjoy your runs, and you will hear from me soon.